everybody, it's Lavender Town, and today I wanted to talk about art school. Reasons why you shouldn't go, reasons why you should go. Hopefully this will help you decide whether or not you should go, or if you're just interested in this subject in general, hopefully it's interesting to you. The first major con I want to talk about is the price. So many art schools are actually quite famous for being expensive. The first one coming to mind is CalArts. CalArts draws a lot of attention because it tends to be one of the places that Pixar and Disney picks from first when they're looking for new talent. So obviously CalArts has become sort of the destination that tons and tons of young artists want to go to. But the fact of the matter is that the current estimate for how much it costs to go to CalArts for 1 year is $46,000. Which, if you do a little bit of multiplication over the 4 years that you would need to attend to get a bachelor's degree, that would be around $200,000, which is more debt than any normal person can pay off, especially an artist. A lot of people don't realize this because it is so impressive to work at Disney or Pixar, but getting an entry-level job there cannot pay that off in any adequate amount of time. So there's certain schools where you just really have to be careful because a lot of them will sort of they'll take advantage of your dreams and they'll basically have you paying way more money than you can pay off in any reasonable amount of time. So that's one of the biggest issues with art school, especially because even if you go to somewhere like CalArts, there's no guarantee that you'll get a job straight out of school, and nobody wants to enter the adult world with $200,000 of debt and no job. And unfortunately, this is something that does actually happen to real people. The other thing is you can't trust a scholarship to be there for you. Oftentimes they give first year scholarships to make it seem more plausible that you could actually do this and stay in a school that expensive, and then they take it away. That was something I experienced in my first year. Unfortunately, the school's regular tuition was not too much for me, but if it had been, I wouldn't have been able to continue my education. It's kind of unfair, but schools do tend to generally give the most scholarships to first years to sort of hook people in with a better deal right at the start. Second con is less of a practical one and more one that affects your mental state. Art school tends to be a bubble. Basically, you get surrounded by so many other artists, and that can be a really wonderful thing, but it also creates an environment, especially because they expect you to work a lot of hours. For example, a studio class is generally 5 to 6 hours long, and you're spending all that time with other artists and art teachers, and you rarely get to go out and do other things. So basically you're trapped in this bubble where everybody's thinking and talking about the same kind of things, and you can actually sort of forget what normal life is like and what normal people are interested in, which can be a problem if you want to go into like the entertainment industry. For example, we actually had a concept artist who's an alumni from our school, and he worked on a Lara Croft game, and he did this really amazing concept art for it, but he worked such long hours that he'd never even gotten to play it, and it had been like months since it had come out. So that's one of those things that can be kind of an issue. You can lose perspective on what the outside world is like and just get trapped in like art world, and that can make you really hard to talk to, and also it can make your art less interesting because you get stuck in this circle where you're just thinking and talking about the same things, and all you're thinking about is art, and you don't have anything that can inspire you from outside of that world. So that's a major issue, and that can cause a lot of art block, unfortunately. This con is also kind of a misnomer. A lot of people think that you learn art at art school, and while that's kind of true, there's also an expectation that you have a pretty decent understanding of a lot of different things that you may or may not actually have an understanding of. For example, when I entered ACAD with my portfolio, I was accepted on a portfolio that was entirely digital, and that was because I didn't paint. I had never painted before. And so when I entered the school in first year, I was like, I need to take a painting class because everyone else knows how to paint and I want to learn. So I took a first year painting class, and I realized that I'd made a terrible mistake because a lot of the people in that class had gotten into the school on a painting portfolio. So the teacher not only didn't teach us how to paint, but also didn't even tell me basic things like how to clean out my very expensive brush, so I ruined it immediately. And she also didn't tell me about what paints not to get on your skin because they're toxic. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff I had to figure out on my own. And while it is perfectly understandable that they wouldn't want to teach very basic painting techniques to a class of mostly experienced painters, it was something I kind of was frustrated by, considering I was paying top dollar for this education, and my teacher, even when I asked, wouldn't really help me out. This con is such a big deal to me that I almost made it a video on its own, but I thought I'd mention it here too. Art school inspires some really self-destructive behavior, and the culture of art school often actually encourages it. So, for example, like, there would be lots of students, and I was definitely guilty of this, especially in first year, who would basically compete and brag about how little sleep they were getting, how rarely they ate, replacing coffee with meals, all these different things, and it kind of was like, it was one of those things you would take pride in because it showed how hard you were working and how serious you were about art. But it quickly became this thing where, like, people were just self-destructing, and it was making them worse. Like, it was making their artwork worse because obviously you're a living being and you need food and sleep to survive. And if you're constantly going on nothing, you'll actually end up wasting time being sick and being too tired to effectively work. I once went to class and I was so sick that I was actually shaking because I was cold because I had such a terrible fever, and my nose was running, and basically couldn't get anything done, but I had to be there for 6 hours because the teacher I had was kind of unkind to me, and he wouldn't accept absences unless you had a doctor's note. And because I was international, I didn't want to have to go deal with trying to get a doctor's note. I didn't know how to use my student health insurance at the time. So basically I spent an entire day's worth of work just shivering, not getting any work done, and that is not the best way to show your dedication to your art. The final con I'm going to talk about is the nature of art school grading. So basically, there's a really unfortunate thing where basically if you get a teacher that doesn't like you, or that you have some kind of issue with, because art is kind of subjective, obviously there are rules to art and there's formal things that you have to do, but the grading system cannot be checked by someone else. If your art teacher says that you get a D, then you get a D. There's almost nothing you can do to try to argue your grade up, because it's not like math or science. You can't show them and be like, this was the right answer. It comes down to a lot of taste and stuff, and usually your good teachers will grade you based on, how much work you put into it and the overall aesthetic appeal. But I have had one teacher in particular who just, for whatever reason, I couldn't get along with, and as a result my grades really suffered and there was nothing I could do. I was barely able to keep my grades up to the level that I needed them to be to keep my first year scholarship. I found out later that part of the reason he was so harsh was because he didn't believe that first years deserved to get A's, which was a real problem because I needed to have mostly A's to keep this scholarship. It was incredibly frustrating hearing this guy say that grades don't matter all the time when they literally were cutting my tuition in half, meaning that if I lost it, my tuition would instantly double. It was a really bad experience, and I just wish I hadn't had to worry about it so much. I wish that there was some more concrete way that I could have been graded. But now it's time to talk about the good things about art school. Here are the pros. The first pro of art school is kind of an obvious one, and it's sort of the reversal of the bubble negative I was talking about earlier. Being surrounded in other artists and feeling that camaraderie of being around people who understand what your dreams and ambitions are all about and know the finer details of what it's like to be an artist can be both really inspiring and just a really fun experience. It's really wonderful to go from being from a small town where there's very few other people who are interested in art to literally having hundreds of other kids your age who have devoted their lives to art. and you'll find that there's all kinds of fun and interesting conversations you can have with these people because they know so much about the art world and the things that you care about. If you walk through my art school's cafeteria, you can actually hear people having loud arguments about art movements and art supplies, and it's just a really fun and interesting atmosphere that is really worthwhile, I think. This is one of the most important things that you can learn at art school, and it's learning how to make art your job and learning how to treat art like a job. That's one of the most critical things that you need to learn before you can actually be a professional. A lot of people think that the most successful artists are the ones who are most talented or technically gifted, but the ones who are most likely to actually have and keep a job in the art industry for years and years are actually just those people who can finish something, who can get something done on time, who can listen to clients, and who can stick to a deadline no matter what. And art school can teach you that faster and better than really any other method I can think of. When you have to face your fellow students in critique, it really motivates you to get everything done on time and to do your best every single time. And that is something that makes you incredibly hireable. This pro is actually just incredibly practical. There's many companies, including Disney, Cartoon Network, and Nickelodeon, who offer internship programs, and you can only apply for them if you are in school. So that means like you're in college, you're either a third or a fourth year when you apply, and they won't even take your application unless you are currently attending a school, really an art school, and that's pretty much like 100% a requirement. So if you want to work at any of those places, an internship is pretty much the most normal way that you could get a job there, just because it is so competitive. That's a great way to get your foot in the door, and you literally can't go for them unless you're at school. Also, art schools and design schools tend to train you for this type of industry job. So for a multitude of reasons, if working in cartoons is sort of your dream, that is something you really need to consider. There's all kinds of things that are offered to students that just aren't offered to people who graduated high school and didn't go anywhere else. Also, there's certain programs that you can get for way cheaper if you're currently attending college. Many Adobe programs are this way. I know Toon Boom is cheaper when you're attending college, and same thing with Maya, the 3D sculpting program. These programs are usually multiple thousands of dollars, so if you can get them for a discounted student rate, it's a real benefit to you. The next major pro is that you learn how to look at not only other people's art, but also your own art with a real critical eye. It takes a long time to train yourself to look at your own art through the eyes of a critic or a professional, and it's something that's really hard to learn, and you just don't know if you have that skill until you get it, basically. You might feel like you're able to critique your own work already, but at least for me, I didn't know how to, and I thought I did when I attended art school. But as I took more and more classes and I heard the critiques I was getting, I started to realize there were so many elements of my art that I wasn't really looking at with a lot of scrutiny. Little things like anatomical things, color things. Obviously, I use a lot of cartoons now, but when I was in school, I was having to do a lot of realistic portraiture and stuff, and there's so many little elements of drawing a human's face. There's so many little elements of creating a great logo design or something, and I feel like you really need someone who's a professional in that field to look it over in front of everyone and explain to you every little thing that could be wrong with it. And once they do that, obviously it's very painful because you're realizing there's so many more things to worry about than you'd ever even conceived of. But at the same time, once you learn this skill, you get better at art so fast because you know exactly what you need to work on. The final pro is having a degree. Now, obviously, having a college degree makes you more employable than someone who does not. They've done all kinds of statistics about this and whatnot, and usually if you're competing with someone who's at the same level as you, but they have a degree and you don't, generally you're not going to be the one who gets picked. In addition to that, your degree basically says that you believe that your art is worthwhile. You have invested 4 years of your life and a ton of money to basically just study art. So that already kind of proves your dedication to this field. There's a lot of people who really love to do art, but they can't, again, like I mentioned before, they can't get things done on time, or they only can work on art when they feel inspired. And obviously, if you're that type of person, you're not very hireable because companies need you to work whenever they need you to work. So just by having a degree, that's a way that you can sort of say, hey, Cartoon Network or wherever you're applying, I can do this. I can be told what to do, and even if I'm not inspired, I will still get all the work done, which again is like, if you want to be an arts professional and you want to make this a full-time job, you have to show that you're that kind of person who will show up and get the art done and make great stuff even when you're not really feeling it, which is a major difficult kind of skill to learn, and that separates you from a lot of your competition. So yeah, I would say if you're not a hobbyist and you really want to get like a studio job and you want basically to draw for a living, I think that getting an arts degree is a really good idea. And again, it doesn't have to be a super prestigious or expensive school. It just has to be a school that did in fact challenge you and force you to learn the kind of grit and dedication that people want to see out of artists in a professional field. Alright, that about wraps it up. Those were the top 5 worst and best things about going to art school. If you have any specific questions about art school, the experience of it, and how to put together a portfolio, just comment them down below and I will try to answer them and be very responsive to those, just because I remember how difficult it was to sort of make this decision, figure out where I should go, all of that kind of thing. So I would love to help you guys out, just because yeah, it's kind of a difficult thing to figure out on your own. And I hope you guys would please tell me if you liked this format of video. I've never done anything like this before. I thought it would be fun to do a lot of tiny little speed paints and have them sort of illustrate the points I was going over. So please let me know if that's something you liked. And if you did, you can give me ideas for other stuff I can talk about in the same format. So if you've been a long-time subscriber to my channel, you might remember this video I did a while back. It's the only sponsored video I've ever done, and I'm actually coming up on a deadline for it. If I can get it to 200,000 views within the next week, I will be able to make a lot more videos for you guys. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week. A big thank you to my patrons, including Den, Brock, Juan Alvarez, Chartype, Libliblible, Adrian Delport, Adrian Morales, at Liv Likes to Draw, Pinamel, Kate Meekins, and Muffins McGee. Thank you guys so much for your support.